Hello, Justice Warriors. Good morning. It is Monday. It's almost 11 o'clock East Coast Standard Time, and it is the 22nd of May. So we are all anxiously awaiting for the families getting justice. And there's many people that think that Mr. Koberger is the MF who did this, and let's just fry him. He might be. He might be, and he might not be. But it's really important to preserve our constitutional rights and to preserve the presumption of innocence. There's been a lot of brouhaha over the weekend with that Dateline that came out. I think it was Friday night. I watched it Saturday night, and I was not impressed at all. I'm a big fan of shows like that. I'm a big fan of Keith Morrison, but he failed me, in my opinion, on that episode. There are a few things. So I was also watching MSNBC this morning, just listening to what they were going to say about this whole thing. And I found it disturbing that when they described what was going to be happening today in Idaho, they said his DNA was found on the knife sheath found at the scene of the crime, and that there's a car matching his car on video surveillance nearby at the time of the crimes. They failed to mention how common that car is. And I know it is quite a possibility that it's him that's guilty. I think it's also a very strong possibility that there's more than just him that's guilty. And then there's the possibility that it's not him and that this whole thing is a charade. We've been getting the runaround with so many Facebook and Reddit and 4chan and all these social media platforms. We've got the Papa Roger, we got the Inside Looking, we've got the Josco 1972. Um, unless the defendant wanted to get caught, I don't think anybody is going to be putting up social media posts like that. Of course, it's possible. Anything is possible. And we all know that there's been many serial offenders who have taunted law enforcement and written letters to the newspaper and that kind of thing. And so, of course, it's possible that this would be the new way of doing that in the age of technology. But I just don't think so. And I want to talk about the Coburgers Sister. One of the things that was said in Dateline was that Coburgers Sister had mentioned to the parents over Christmas break that she was concerned, or something to this effect, that she thought that everyone in the household should consider that it was a possibility that he could be guilty. The car, the proximity, the latex gloves, which there's a lot of assumptions there. So there's the assumption that the latex gloves are not normal for him, and they may have been, especially post COVID. Um, it's my opinion that if you know somebody who lives in that vicinity with that car and you don't know their alibi, that you'd be basically a doofus not to at least entertain the possibility, even if you thought there's no way that this person that I know could ever do that, but to be realistic. So I don't understand how Keith Morrison was portraying that there were sources that said that his sister said this. Like the hearsay, you guys. Maybe she did say it. And my opinion is that anybody with some intelligence would be thinking that way. You want to rule things out, you want to leave no stone unturned. But we don't even know if she said that. And then things like him separating garbage with his latex gloves on, putting his garbage in baggies to then put into the neighbors' garbage cans. The story is that that's how they found Coburger on the night of December 30th when they busted in and arrested him at 1:30 in the morning at his parents' home. How did they know he was going to put the garbage in the baggies into the neighbor's garbage? Again, there are so many assumptions. Unless he'd already been doing that and they were watching him do that and he kept doing it, it sounds to me like there might have been an incident where he was at the neighbor's garbage. And again, they tried to describe it like these houses are so far apart from each other and that you'd have to hike a quarter of a mile to get to the neighbor's garbage can. Not true. It's much more suburban than rural. And the assumption is that he was disposing of his own garbage in baggies in the neighbor's garbage. And again, that would be so stupid. Like, that's not any different really than putting it in your own garbage. In fact, it's worse because, yeah, we all know that everyone's got the doorbell surveillance, ring doorbell cameras, and those types of things. I just can't wrap my mind around this whole case. There are so many insane features of it. And yes, I always say truth is stranger than fiction, but we're supposed to believe that this guy who's the smartest person in the room and always wants everyone to know that he's the smartest person in the room did something as asinine as traveling 7 miles from a state that doesn't have the death penalty to go to a state that does have capital punishment to then commit 4 capital punishment types of crimes? Right, right. I mean, of course, anything's possible, but I think we just need to consider source. Who is our source? Our source is mainstream media and law enforcement. We know that sometimes these sources are not trustworthy, and they keep demonstrating that to be the case, unfortunately. Um, so the termination from Wazoo, the criminal defendant was released from all of his affiliations with the school after his arrest. There's the allegations that there was a letter, I want to call it a dummy letter because I'm not buying it at all, some dummy letter that was received by him, what, like the day before he committed these crimes? They're trying to pin every crime that's happened in the last 10 or 12 months on the criminal defendant. That whole thing with the car prowler in the neighbor's car, the next door neighbor, last March or April. There are so many car prowlers around that area, you guys. It's rampant with car prowlers. That's just the culture there. And then for Dateline to say, well, for all we know, it could be him because he was doing an online graduate program that he could have been doing his logging on from anywhere. And yeah, he could have been doing his logging on from anywhere. But if it was him, law enforcement would know that. Absolutely. And again, that neighbor got a Ring doorbell cam when that happened. So they have so much information. In fact, what, 51 terabytes? They have an abundance, an embarrassment of riches of information. So if he's guilty, they have that information. Dean Gillespie, I've brought him up so many times. He's an Ohio man that was framed in the 90s for 3 kidnapping and essays that happened across 2 different police jurisdictions. He was ruled out as not a potential suspect based on forensic hard evidence. And then 2 years into the case being cold, I think it was the police chief's son was the new detective assigned to this case, and for whatever reason, destroyed the evidence that ruled Dean Gillespie out, and he concocted and fabricated evidence that basically ruled him in. The victims were none deceased. So he put like photo lineups and tricked them. When Dean was sprung from his 24-year or his prison sentence, he was sprung at 24 years. That was 11 years ago. It took him 11 years to win in a federal court just this past November of 2022. He won $45 million in a jury deliberation for wrongful imprisonment, wrongful conviction. It took 35 years out of his life. It took more than half of his life. He's in his late 50s now, still lives in Ohio. His biggest concern wasn't about himself when this all went down, when he was awarded the $45 million. His biggest concern was for these victims who thought that they had justice, who thought that they had protection, who had no justice and no protection. That detective who did that knowingly and intentionally was never even investigated, you guys. Never even investigated. Police have immunity. Police know that they have immunity. Most police officers are not going to abuse that, but some do. That might not apply in the Coburger case, but it's important to pay attention to the evidence, pay attention to your sources, pay attention to the way the story's being told. I couldn't believe that. The DNA was found on the knife sheath that was found at the scene of the crime. His DNA. Like, why? I don't understand why the media would have an interest in convicting this guy in the court of public opinion. What's their investment? Seriously, I don't understand that. Although I kind of do. The graduate student at Wazoo who was spooked when there was that car parked in front of her apartment when she got home at like 6:30 at night, and then the guy tried to push his way into her place, and she called the Pullman PD, and they put out a message the next day to whoever did this to please come talk to them so that they could clear up the misunderstanding. Seriously? So I'm fully expecting that to become another possibility that it could have been Coburger if it happened before he was arrested. I can't remember when it happened. It might have happened after he was arrested. We'll have to look at that. So the fact that Keith Morrison said that Coburger did not get the assistantship with Pullman PD on the last episode of Dateline over the weekend. Where did he get that information? That is not information that has been released. The only information that Pullman PD has released is that they have no information about the outcome, right? And we know that that's a crock. We know that there's just no way possible. So why did Keith Morrison say that he didn't get the assistantship? And if he didn't get the assistantship, then why isn't that public? Why hasn't that been disclosed prior to the Dateline? That was a big one for me. That was a big hang up. That 911 call needs to be released. The initial 911 call from 2 minutes to noon on November 13th, Sunday. And who made that call? And whose phone was it from? They said that it was from one of the surviving witnesses' phones, but it wasn't one of the surviving witnesses. But maybe the phone was passed around and they talked to multiple people. I don't know. There's so much confusion. So the letter, the bogus dummy letter of termination from Wazoo, that letter is not real, in my opinion. So I'm going to wrap it up. I know we are just all on pins and needles waiting to see what happens today. My guess is that he will plead not guilty. I mean, that's pretty much just how it's done. Any judge or attorney will tell you to plead not guilty, even if you are guilty, so that your charges can be reduced. So, um, of course, there's the possibility that he would plead guilty. I think it's slim to nil, but you never know. Life is full of surprises. And then I do think it's time to lift the gag order, but we'll see. I mean, that would be pretty wild if they did, wouldn't it? I really hope that they put out that 911 call. I have a feeling that 911 call is a game changer and that it's never going to be released. Never. That's my conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. So please hit that like button and share and subscribe. People with kids, it's the end of the school year. The end of the school year might have already happened for some, or it's this week or next week for many. We've got Memorial Day coming up. So summer's here. Summer's almost here. And yeah, it's going to be a wild ride with this, isn't it? Peace out. Have a great afternoon. Make sure you get your exercise, eat right, high protein, high produce, stay relaxed, stay calm. Just be kind, be honest, keep it real, and we will see you on the next one. Sending you light, sending you love. Thanks so much for watching.